Hello, everyone. Today we are talking nonprofits. My guest is Tauna Batiste, and she has over 20 years of nonprofit management. So today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons, the benefits of nonprofit, and the application process. If you have not been here before, hello and welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. In this space, we talk practical tips, realistic strategies, and workable solutions around personal finance that lead to financial freedom. So, again, welcome. I will bring my guest into the stream and then we will start the discussion. Hi, Tana. Welcome
Hello,
to
thank
Dr.
you.
Seb Talks Money. I am so happy that you accepted my invitation to join us here on the Dr. Seb Talks Money broadcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here to talk money tonight.
All righty. So the first thing I want to start off is what is a nonprofit? Because there are people who we've heard the term nonprofit many
Right?
times, but I don't think people really understand the function of a nonprofit, what it really is. So can you explain to us
Exactly.
what is a nonprofit?
So, first, I'd love to share a little bit about what a nonprofit is. I think it's really important that people understand one of the main things that gets lost is that we think that a nonprofit business is so different from a for-profit business when a lot of times they actually share a lot of similarities. The main differences are these. A nonprofit was created for public interest. So the IRS has requirements about what a nonprofit can and cannot do. But the main focus of it is that they're created for public interest. They're exempt from the corporate income tax code, which means this is the exemption. This is what everybody is excited about. It's like, oh, you don't have to pay taxes. Well, you don't have to pay some taxes.
Yeah.
You don't pay tax on income that's generated completing your mission, but you still are required to pay, and you don't have to pay sales tax in most instances, but you are still required to pay for employees, your employee tax. You're still required to pay tax on any income that you made outside of those things that you're doing in your nonprofit. One of the big things is that the organization can't be focused primarily on lobbying. So like a CPAC or something like that, those are not nonprofit organizations. They are lobbying organizations. And so they do not carry that same designation. You also can't be involved as in a campaign for a specific candidate. So you can campaign for an issue. Let's say, there's a school levy and you all are in favor of the school levy. You can participate in educating people on that, but you cannot go as far to say, well, we want Joe Smith and not Ken Barnes. You can't do that part. The profits stay with the organization. So there can't be shareholders in a nonprofit. That's where the nonprofit title actually comes from. So those revenues that are built need to stay within the organization and be reinvested. And finally, donations that come into the organization are tax deductible to the donor. So this is the way that we encourage others to participate with us by giving them the opportunity to then receive that tax deduction.
Okay. Yes. So this sounds somebody would want to jump on this, right? Oh, no tax? Oh, because that's one of the things that people are always talking about. Oh, I don't want to make more money because of more taxes, which is a story for another day. I've had discussions around that. More taxes, but you still get more money. But anyway.
Right.
But give us, it would sound like, oh, I want to do this because I can make money and I can keep it. I don't have to so much taxes on it, like the corporate tax. So give us some pros and cons of forming a nonprofit,
and I think you're hitting
when you form one versus why you may not want to consider forming one.
Right. I think you are hitting on some of the key components that go into this. One of the things that we think about when I think about as a professional, when people say, oh, I'm going to create a nonprofit because that's going to give me the opportunity to keep more money
Mhm.
Well, remember back just a few moments ago when I said it has to be focused on public good. You cannot create a nonprofit for any personal endeavor where the funding comes to you. So you can't start a foundation and say, "Well, I'm the recipient or the beneficiary, or my children are the beneficiaries." It has to really be spread around. Otherwise, it's personal income. So the other benefit of having nonprofit status is that you have additional funding access. So going to that kind of donor structure, individuals, public and private grants, these things are all designated and usually have this clause that says that they need to go to a 501c3 specific organization. You'll have some that designate to 501c4s or other organizations, but it's really this broad funding access that is one of the key benefits. It also takes those good works that we're doing and puts them in a limited liability corporation under the organization of the actual nonprofit. So it's a business. So when you're doing that good work, you're not your personal assets are not tied into the liability
Yeah.
of what the organization is doing. Liability is huge. I know that you definitely are training people about protecting themselves in that area. And then finally is that global recognition of this nonprofit status, that when people know that you've been approved by the IRS, that there is this stature that comes with it, that we're known that you are doing good work and that you have been vetted by the government to ensure that you're doing the work that you say, so I can entrust you with my dollars.
Yeah, sense of trust from seeing that.
Right. It is, yes, exactly.
Yes. So many people are familiar with 501c3s, myself included. But you did mention like 501, I think you said 501c4 or 504 or something. I'm not very familiar with the different designations.
Yes.
But can you kind of give us a brief synopsis of the some other designations and why the 501c3 may be better over the other ones?
Well, I think it comes down to rules. So as we all know, the tax code is lengthy and it is definitely lengthy in this area. And so there are different types of nonprofit designations that can be given. A fraternity and sorority is different than a professional organization, is different from a hospital. And then when we think about charitable organizations or what fall under the 501c3 are things like, United Way and Salvation Army and these organizations for public good. So there's a lot of different types. It really depends on what your function is going to be. And then it has different tax benefits. So in some of the other organizations, your donation to the organization is not considered tax deductible. Yeah. And so this is something that you want to be mindful of. But my mom is a retired IRS agent in the nonprofit division. And so we talk shop a lot about people who are coming through and they think they know what they want to do. And they send in those things and we're like, yeah, that doesn't fly for what's going to be considered public good. And I think it comes back to that idea of, does the broad public have access to this? And so some of those others where there are membership associated organizations is where you're going to see the different codes. You can have social clubs. So, like your motorcycle clubs or elk clubs and things of that nature. There's a designation for that. There really is, in the tax code, a designation for everything. But the only one getting this full tax benefit in this way is the 501c3.
Okay, makes sense. So we've talked a little bit about what a nonprofit is, and some of the pros and cons of forming one, or why you may consider versus not consider it. Right. And actually, we may want to talk a little bit more about some of the cons, because I don't think we talk about it so much. So let's talk about that before we go on to the next question that I wanted to ask you.
Let's do it.
Because some people might want to understand, why that may not be the best. Right. That may not be the best option for them. at this time.
Well, I'm
So let's,
I'm gonna jump into point number two,
okay.
and we're here to talk about money, and kind of the idea is, will this help me gain more money? Creating a nonprofit can actually cause you to lose personal profit, because now there is a requirement of like how, an accounting of how you spend your dollars. When you're a small business, or even a larger business, you can choose to pay yourself what you wish, right? It's your business. You have owner's equity, you have control over what your salary or your draw may be. In a nonprofit, you no longer have that ability in that way. So it kind of goes back to point number one, in loss of ownership. The organization is now subject to additional laws, regulations, and increased oversight, which means a governing board, which means that you need to, your financials need to be accessible. You need to report out every year in a 990, which is the reporting form for nonprofits, of where their money came, how much money came in, what did we do with it, how much money went out, what's left. And that becomes public record. And so then there's associated costs. So it's going to cost you to get it set up. Those who choose to have an audit or need to, you're going to have additional need of maybe some other professional skills to manage that process. The public scrutiny. So, it's different when it's your deal. You can do what you want to do in your own house. But once you create a nonprofit, it is no longer your house. It is now the public's house. And so they have a right to question what you do. They have a right to come in and request further information about what you're doing financially. And you, by law, must comply.
Yeah.
And then it limits your activity. There are some folks who have or things that start to branch into other areas. And there's some ways that you can continue. Like, let's say that you created a nonprofit that was teaching people about construction, and you wanted to start your own construction company. That would actually be aligned with your mission and your values. But if you're the construction company and you want to create and run an ice cream business, that does not align with your mission. And so then those dollars put you at risk of audit, and you need to be more careful about that entity. There's ways that we can work with it. Like, a nonprofit can own other businesses, and those businesses are taxed under the normal taxation code, but they can still, all of those profits can come back into it. Think about Goodwill and how they do their things. Their retail stores benefit their mission. And so they're able to run those, and those dollars be counted in under their mission. But that was the mission they were created with. And so that's how they protect themselves.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So I want you to give us just a summary of the application process. And for those of you who are listening, and those who are going to be listening to the replay, I'm going to share her contact information, where if you are wanting to actually form a nonprofit, you can speak with her about the actual process, and based on what it is that you are trying to do. But in the meantime, if you would share with us just a summary of the application process.
Yes. So the application process is multifaceted and time consuming. So I just want to put that out there to get started, because a lot of people go into this and think, oh, it's just like forming your business. I don't know about you, but Dr. Sev, but when I set up my businesses, it probably took me all of 15 minutes to do what the state required of me to do. Took the most time was to put my credit card information in, right? And that's not the same with a nonprofit, because it has to be approved by the IRS. There is a little bit lengthier process. So the first thing you're going to do is register a business like any other business, but as a nonprofit within your state. So your state needs to first recognize you. Every state has different requirements and things around that. Some states are going to require your articles of incorporation, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. But you're going to need to get that set up first. The next thing that you're going to do is get your EIN, which is still typical with business, from the IRS. From there, you go into an application form 1023 or 1023-EZ. The only difference in the forms is what you anticipate your income being in those first few years. Most organizations in the IRS actually says on their site now, they recommend that most organizations start with the EZ, unless you were a corporate foundation or something where you knew you had a large amount of dollars you're going to be immediately putting in. It's unnecessary to do that full application. But they're going to ask you for things. They want to know everything, right? Yeah. And everything about your structures. They want to know who your board members are going to be. They want to know what your mission, your purpose is. They want to know what your activities are going to be. They want to know, do you have a dissolution provision, and more. So it really becomes an in-depth look at what your business is, almost like a business plan, but different. And they want to know all these things before they say yay or nay about, can you go forward? Now, the IRS receives more, and I pulled this directly from them, more than 95,000 applications for tax exempt status each year. A ton of those get kicked out. And I'm going to tell you why. Incomplete applications, applications for services not qualified. There is a fee. And the fee changes, it increases. But last I checked, the fee was $600. The last time I was working with a client, it was $600 just to submit this application. And it's currently taking 6+ months for the full 1023. And for the easy, they're currently about 4 months in before they assign it to an agent to work. And you still may have several months thereafter before you receive your actual designation. Now, I have clients ask me, does that mean that I cannot start my activities now? No, you can actually start your activities and be able to say to donors and to others, we've submitted for our 501c3. You would be able to then also show them that application if a donor asked. The only caveat is this. If you go into it and you start and your activities are disallowed, you are going to owe the taxes on any revenue generated. And you're going to need to notify anyone who donated that their donation is not tax deductible. Right? Yeah. So be careful. I mean, if you know you're opening a children's home and that's all you're doing, and you know your activities, like it is assured your activities are going to be okay, you're all right. But you want to make sure that you start out strong. And I know that you support, getting your budgets together, getting all of those other components that make you strong in business and make your money strong. You want to start in this space the same way with all of those wonderful tips that you've been giving us.
Yeah, I'm not surprised when you said that statistics about 95,000, because I can imagine there are a lot of people who see a nonprofit as a way to say, I can make some money, but then I don't have to pay the government that corporate tax. So let me go the nonprofit route without really thinking about what the qualifications are and what it takes to be a nonprofit. Exactly. As you said, there are certain stipulations, and is it for the public good is one of them to be considered. It's not something that you think is good that can make you some money and you can shelter that money in the nonprofit. Has to be for the public good.
Right. And that's the key thing to remember, is that if it's not if it's not something that it will benefit a large swatch of the United States, of the people that tax dollars go on to support, you probably need to think about it a little bit further. And it also is that idea of, I can benefit more than the public. So if you are creating a nonprofit and, the way your breakdown is going to be is that you're paid $100,000, but you spend $5,000 on programming. That's not long for this world, right? Yeah. That's not going to go, because people are just it's not going to fly with donors or others. They want to know where the dollars coming in and where are the dollars going out. And if your focus on it is you in the process, a nonprofit is not for you. That right there is the first thing. Is your focus you or others? If it's others, keep going down the road. If it's you, this is not for you. This is not for you. Keep your $600.
Yeah, it might be worth investing that 600 in the stock market.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because we hear these stories all the time about people who are really they're thinking they're going to get over the government. I mean,
Oh
there are
no.
some people
Oh
who
no.
may go in there with really a good intention that they think that what they're
Right.
doing will qualify as a nonprofit, but there are too many of those other stories where
Right.
people are going into this thinking they can pocket money out of this process
Right. Right.
because then you have donors. I'm selling my service or my goods. It depends on who's going to buy. I can't force anybody to buy. But
Right.
when I have donors, then I can go out there and present myself as I'm doing this
Right.
service for people who are disabled. I'm doing this service for whatever sector of the population I'm doing
Right.
it for, and people are going to gravitate to that because they want to be a blessing. They want to
Exactly.
help, but then
Exactly.
the underlying intent might not be so good.
Right. Right. And I think, here's the thing that we counsel, I've heard some horror stories, y'all. I've heard some things, as I've heard from the inside of the IRS, of anonymously, of course. But when you think about the worth of that, like you may have, and I was a nonprofit executive director for many years. So I wanted to say that I was always looking for partners that I was willing to pay on a contract basis to come in and bring those same skills. And I don't care what they pay themselves.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is a matter of the market is saturated with nonprofits. Is there a nonprofit that you can partner with?
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity or space for your gift and service? We actually really encourage people to look around them before starting their own nonprofit because donors have many, many options. And the new kid on the block is not usually the first one they're looking at.
Yeah.
And so they're
right.
exactly. And you can keep your ownership. You can keep your, your slice of the pie, making some other moves, follow Dr. Sev's, suggestions to keep your money with you so that you don't have to go through. I mean, running a nonprofit is a endeavor in and of itself outside of whatever service you do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities to grow. But look around first, don't just jump in and say, oh, well, this is the way to go. Partner with a school district, partner with a youth organization, partner with, you can even partner with a corporation and say, hey, we know you have a presence here. Why don't you partner with us to provide it? And, reach out to the organization and say, okay, we want to help you to fund this service. There's a lot of different ways to be involved in work for the greater good and stacking your own chips that don't involve taking on the risk that is a nonprofit. Now, I love nonprofits. It's been my business for most of my life. I tell people I started volunteering at 11. I love a nonprofit experience, but I also know it's not for the faint of heart. Yeah. And it is not the place to get rich at all. It just is not, it's not, the sector is not designed for that. And once you get into it, you recognize how many people are scrutinizing, how much is, leadership getting paid? How much are we paying in overhead and programming? Those things are all real to donors, especially the donors that have the most dollars. Yeah. So they are, you're not going to walk in and pull the wool over their eyes or the governments because they're savvy at doing this. They've been doing it for a long while.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So I really like the idea of partnering with an existing nonprofit. And I think that's the same with any business. You want to have a North Star, something that you can look at, or some organization that you can kind of look at and see what they're doing and see what can you learn from what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And then you can branch off, because why reinvent the wheel? I mean, it's already out there. So I really love that suggestion. All right. So is there anything else before we wrap up that you would like to share with us before I go ahead and share your contact information? Anything else that you want to share with us?
When you are going into this, just plan. I think, we talk about the application process, but being ready for the application process, give yourself a good 3 to 6 months to work through it. We often, obviously offer the services from our business, but we also would encourage that you may choose to work with your lawyer, your accountant. There are some in communities that have experience in this space. I also always caution that you should also get a nonprofit advisor, someone who actually knows how it works. A lot of times when we work with these other professions, they know the dollars and cents piece, or they may know the legalese, but they don't put you in position to know the data, what this is going to translate to in your day to day. And so you may want to also, reach out to someone in your community and just ask them to act as an advisor to look at what you're doing and make sure that you're headed in the right direction. That will save you a lot of time on the back end as you're allowing the IRS to take their time to process it and get you going to full status.
Yeah. Sounds like great advice to me. All right. So if anyone would like to work with Tauna, I'm going to share two of her websites. There is this one, which is drewalexanderco.com, DREWALEXANDERCO.com. And on this one, tell us a little bit what they can find on this one before.
Yes. So Drew Alexander Consulting is a nonprofit boutique firm. We work nationwide with organizations to strengthen their legacy. So one of the things that we do is nonprofit development, and we will work with you from your concept idea to all the way through your application thereafter. But we support really every aspect of management when it comes to nonprofit, whether that's executive, from your executive and your board, all the way down to your day-to-day volunteers, your structure, your operations, your fundraising, your programs, all of those things. We have content experts in all of those spaces to be able to assist you, especially small and medium nonprofits who need expertise, but aren't quite yet at the area of being able to afford a permanent full-time staff person. So that is our firm.
Okay. All right. So here's the other website that I want to share, and tell us a little bit about what kind of services they can find when they contact you here.
So Tauna Batiste, executive coach, is executive coaching with me. This is working on strategy work. I work with for-profit businesses on this side in a lot of similar ways, but really in leadership development, staff training and professional development as well. But this is the executive coaching side where you get one-on-one with me. On the other side, you may have one of my esteemed team members as your lead. But with this is directly with me on those projects. So.
Okay, awesome. Tauna, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for sharing your expertise around the nonprofit sector. I learned a lot, and I am sure that those who are watching have learned a lot, and those who are going to be watching the replay, I'm sure will learn a lot. So don't forget to please contact her if you have any questions around nonprofit, and she will steer you in the right direction. So until next Sunday, I will be giving you an update on my net worth. I'll be giving you an update on my savings challenge that I started in January. So this next Sunday will be just a catch up of what's been going on in my financial journey on those challenges that I started in January. So I'm hoping you come back on next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. because I've had some exciting things going on in my EFTs and in my REITs, my real estate investment trust. So I want to share that with you and encourage you to use those forms as those vehicles as ways to build up your income. I'm not going to tell you all my business, but I just want to share that part of it so that you can, and how it's been going for me, so that you can think of different ways to increase your income without a lot of effort, but legally.
Yes.
So thanks again, Tauna, and thanks everyone for being here. And those of you who are going to be watching the replay, until next Sunday, I will see you.